arrived in Nevada on Friday morning. As I drove by the exit to the ranch, I noticed the federal vehicles were parked everywhere. On the hillsides, on the tops of the roads. They weren't always easy to see, but they had orange barricades up. When I drove a little further, I noticed that they had a compound dug in down below the freeway, a little hard to see. All kinds of no parking signs along the freeway, so you dare not slow down too much to get a picture. But I did come to an almost halt to get this picture when one of the Fords tore out of the parking lot and began to follow me. Amazingly enough, he followed me all the way to Las Vegas to check into my hotel room, which is 70 miles away. Later on, after he had followed me into town, I came back to check in at the ranch with the Oath Keepers. It had gotten dark. They had a huge stand with flags set up when I got there, and the camp was very full of people. They were all talking about what had happened that day, and there was trailers and food and everything you can imagine. Ice, water, guns, people, ammunition. The whole world had turned out. The next morning, when I woke up at my hotel, I took a picture of the truck of my little federal babysitter. And the next night before I left at 2 a.m. in the morning, there he was again. The only one at my hotel, my little babysitter. So that was special. When I was leaving the next morning, we had gotten word that the BLM had been told and had decided to stand down and that they were leaving. And sure enough, on the hour and 20-minute or so drive to Vegas, we saw a lot of them coming back in. Right there were 2 military vehicles. I think that they had some SWAT teams out there that were military. But nonetheless, the entire trip, driving back out to the ranch from Vegas, it was just a constant train of federal vehicles heading back into Las Vegas from where they had been stationed out near the ranch. Almost every 2-3 miles we would see a vehicle. We must have seen 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60. But what got us concerned and made us believe that maybe this wasn't over was when we got to the drive out 2 miles above the ranch and we saw this. It's hard to see. We had to keep moving, but there were 30 or 40 patrol cars, DHS vehicles, and an armored SWAT car along with 2 SWAT teams. We began to think maybe this wasn't going to be as simple as we had thought. As we got closer to the ranch, we noticed BLM vehicles still all at their station points where they had been before, stationed on the hill, stationed above the no parking signs, behind the orange barricades. How many of them there must have been before all of those we saw driving back into town got back into town is amazing. There had to have been 300 or 400 of them for them to still be that many. Well, we found out that morning Cliven had given them an hour to give him his cattle back, or he was going to go get them. This line of vehicles is the beginning of that process. They are on their way to shut down I-15 and hold the gate area so that the men on horseback can come over and retrieve the cattle. This is the line of volunteers that are going to do that. When we got into camp that morning, we saw that the camp had almost doubled in size. There were now probably 3,000 to 4,000 people, I would say. Across the river, you can see Camp 3 down there on the river had almost doubled in size overnight. The horses were there and unloaded, being tacked. People were getting ready to go. Overnight, several semis had pulled off the freeway and joined our cause. They were parked there in the parking lot. There's a picture of 3 of them. There was about 7 more. That is a second camp that's set up down by the river because we were running out of room, and that is the first camp down on the side of the river. And then again, you can see the small space beside the freeway or beside the roadway where everyone was staying during the day. So now the volunteers are on their way over to the river, and we have gotten word that police and federal officials have shut the road down and shut the freeway down. Those are our snipers, by the way. We had 2 of our own. So there's the freeway shut down, and we didn't think that there was any way over there, and we were afraid that they were heading into a trap. So one of our Oath Keepers who had some optics on the site said, "I see a power line road over there. A 4-wheel drive may be able to get through." So I took off, went out there, and this is what we could see from the top of that road. BLM officials, Las Vegas Metro Police, our people over there, and sure enough, I made it all the way in, and this is what happened next. Okay, we're being warned that if we approach the panels, there will be a confrontation. Ammon said we're not leaving, and as we walk forward, they tell us if we continue, we will be shot. Right there in the white shirt and straw hat, that is Scott Hageman. Has quite a few relatives in the Chadron area. They just told us if we didn't move back, we'd be shot. Ammon said, "You'll have to arrest us all and shoot us all."
We don't move back. People are moving forward with their hands in the air, holding flags with both hands in the air. A mixture of people on foot.
Looks like something you'd see in the West Bank, doesn't it?
People on foot and cowboys.
This guy's trying to talk Ammon and his brothers and their dad, Cliven, into going up by themselves and talking to Las Vegas Metro to work out getting the cattle. Ammon's not that dumb and said, "No, you'll just arrest me." He keeps telling them to back these people off the panels.
We'll make sure that we're not going to need some help if they decide that they're going to pull those pins. But I mean, it's only going to be Bundy and his son. No, it's the people or not. You guys need to leave.
Ammon said, no, it's the people that will get the cattle, not just Bundy and his sons. He said, "You need to leave. The BLM needs to leave, and we'll deal with Las Vegas Metro about getting the cattle." Now, I watched this video, and the whole episode only lasted about 1.5 seconds, but while we were there, it felt like an hour. Someone had banged on the panels. That man stepped back, grabbed his weapon. Everyone back behind the cars crouched in a shooting position, and it didn't last very long, but it seemed like a long time that we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. Then Ammon steps up and cuts off the no trespassing sign, which helped ease tensions just a little bit. We've now been told that the BLM is indeed going to back off. They are going to clear out the area where the compound is. They're going to clear out their armed SWAT team, for lack of a better word, right there. And they're going to allow us to come in and get the cattle. You can see them backing off. They don't trust us. They're being taunted for not wanting to turn their backs on us. That's a Las Vegas Metro officer. They came down in and took over where the BLM were and then led us into the cattle later. But the BLM has to get all of their vehicles now out of the compound. So we took my truck, went back over to camp at the ranch, and picked up Sheriff Richard Mack, who had come in to speak at the press conference on Monday, but was here to help with this. He was talking about the ramifications of them arresting someone when they went in to get the cattle and suggested that we all stay very close. So, of course, that's what we did. But when we got back, you can see everyone was very relaxed. Tensions had eased greatly. Lots more flags out. We had a lot of trucks coming by on the highway, honking and waving support. Those two young gentlemen in the fatigues were from one of the militias, I think New Hampshire. Again, now we're just waiting for Las Vegas Metro Police to come and lead us into the cattle. These were the people that were up lining I-15, and when that sign went up, we had a lot of trucks honking and waving in support, and it was, probably a good hour before we got in to get the cattle, while the BLM cleared out of the compound. And what's interesting, you'll see, is the BLM had so many vehicles still parked in that compound. You can see there's just an entire line of them. And that line goes on and on for about an hour of vehicles coming up out of that compound area. You can see how many there were. There had to have been another 100 vehicles in that compound area, in addition to all the vehicles that had been up on top, parked along the highway and the freeway and at all the checkpoints that were still there, in addition to the 60 or 80 that we had passed coming into Las Vegas when we were going back out to the ranch. You can see there in the background of these shots, they're still coming out of the compound. There were several hundred BLM vehicles there, all told, and there may have been many more. The number was very impressive. You can see here, they're still coming up out of the compound. There's still a trail of them coming up out of the compound. They're calling Cliven to tell him the cattle are out. We had invited him to ride over with us with Sheriff Mack, but he declined, said this was the people now that needed to take credit for standing down the government, and we should go get the cattle. That was our friendly SWAT team we stared at across the fence for a little while. This is the first time we've gotten close enough to actually get a good look at the compound. You can see how much equipment they've hauled in there. There are portable office spaces, portable showers, portable restrooms. They've had asphalt recycle hauled in for the dust. They've built 10 to 12 foot berms around the cattle and around their trucks. They've got huge generators with lights. They have got camper trailers. You can see here in a second, right there in the center of your screen, and right now on the left-hand side of your screen, they put up a 150 foot communications tower. And that was so that that morning when they had ordered the cell towers in the location turned off, they could still communicate on their radios. They've now released the cattle. They're loping home for the river, I'm sure looking for someplace cool. They've been in a small pen for several days in the heat. You'll notice in the video that's coming up, there's several of them that are quite footsore. They ran these cattle in hard in 90-degree heat, and a lot of orphan calves, unfortunately. You'll also notice that all of these cattle are tagged for sale. That is exactly what the BLM had planned to do with them. We did get word that 4 surrounding states, and I think it was 12 or 16 sale barns, said, no, we will not take the cattle if you bring them here. We don't want to be in the middle of this. So I don't know how far they would have had to haul them to get them sold. But at this point, victory for the people. And it actually felt really good, especially the fact that we were still in one piece.
Twilight